Namaskarams. Namaskarams to each and every one of you listening to this program today. My name is Santhi Mahadevan and I'm a resident of Dallas, Texas. And I'm currently a student of Vidwan N.R. Prashant of Mysuru. Accompanying me today on the violin is Sri Umamahesh Iyer, and on the Mrdangam, Sriram Ayyeppen. Our heartfelt thanks to Sri H.L. Kumar and Srimati Vanitha Suresh for providing the platform to present this Krishna Charitham. I would like to add that this is a very unique program in that it is not a full-fledged music concert, but in this program I will be narrating several stories, episodes, incidents, anecdotes from the life of Sri Krishna, and I'll be interspacing that with apt and appropriate krithis or paragraphs from krithis. So it's more along the lines of the kavi and the krithi that he composed. Kaviyum, krithiyum. Hope all of you will enjoy this presentation. It is the eve of the auspicious Vaikunta Ekadasi here in the Western Hemisphere, and it is already the Punya Dinam of Vaikunta Ekadasi in the Eastern Hemisphere. So the three of us, we consider it our blessing and honor to present this Krishna Charitham on such a divine and auspicious day. May all the gods and goddesses shower us with their kripa and arul and help the world be rid of this pandemic very, very soon. Seeking the blessings of our Kuladevam and our Gurus, I wish to begin with the traditional Ganesha Vandhanam for a very smooth run of this program as well as an obstacle-free life for everyone. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. When we are talking about Krishna Charitham, what best place to start other than the birth of Sri Krishna? For this, I want to transport all my listeners and viewers to the kingdom of Vrishni, whose capital city was Mathura, and it was ruled over by a very good king called Ugrasena and his wife Payodha. They had two children, Kamsa and Devaki. Kamsa grew up, and unfortunately when he was growing up, he grew up into a child that was neither deserved by Ugrasena nor desired by them. He grew up into a very tyrannical character, so much so that at one point of time he usurped the throne, put his own father and mother in prison, and sat on the throne himself. And from there he continued his very tyrannical and despotic rule. But having all those bad characters and vices, he was very, very fond of his sister Devaki, very affectionate towards her, so much that when she reached marriageable age, he fixed her marriage with his best friend Vasudeva. And the marriage was duly solemnized, and the love and affection for his sister was so much that instead of hiring a charioteer, he decided to be the charioteer himself in order to bring the newlywed couple home to the palace, where he had arranged a huge big Griha Pravesham ceremony for them. So he was driving them from the wedding location to the palace. He was charioting them when, lo and behold, a celestial voice or an incorporeal voice was heard, which announced or proclaimed that the eighth child born to this very imaginary couple is going to bring about your end, O Kamsa. Hearing that, his ego was tormented and his temper rose, and he dragged Devaki out of the chariot with an intention of killing her. But for the timely intervention of Vasudeva, that would have happened also. But Vasudeva pleaded with his friend saying, I am your best friend, Devaki is your affectionate sister. Why do you want to kill her? We are newlyweds and she is the innocent lady who is not prophesied to kill you. The prophecy said that the 8th child is going to kill you. So why do you want to kill her? So Vasudeva tried to talk some sense into Kamsa, and he was appeased to a certain extent. So he refrained from killing Devaki and did bring them to the palace. But instead of the newlyweds having their traditional auspicious Griha Pravesham ceremony, he arranged a Kara Griha Pravesham ceremony for them. So they were imprisoned. Devaki and Vasudeva were in jail. And Vasudeva, a man of his words, promised Kamsa to give all the children born unto him to Kamsa. With that promise, Kamsa was a little appeased with just imprisoning them. To cut the very long story short, 6 children were born to Devaki, and each of the 6 was murdered by Kamsa. Devaki became pregnant for the 7th time, and Vasudeva and Devaki were understandably very anxious, panic-stricken, but due to divine intervention, that 7th pregnancy was transferred over to the womb of Vasudeva's another wife, Rohini, who lived on the opposite banks of the Yamuna. So at Mathura, Kamsa and all his cohorts believed that Devaki had simply suffered a miscarriage. Time went by again. Devaki became pregnant for the 8th time, and needless to say, the panic in Vasudeva's mind, the anxiety and anxiousness in Devaki's mind was at its epitomal heights. They knew that there was this divine intervention, there was the celestial voice which had assured them that this child would be safe and that child would bring about Kamsa's end. But even then, they had already gone through a lot which no parent should go through, and so their anxiousness and their panic was understandable. In the late stages of her pregnancy, one day, Bhagawan Sri Mahavishnu appeared in their dreams, and he reassured them that he is aware of the tyranny that Kamsa was running in his city and kingdom, how Kamsa had become a big burden for Bhumi Devi, and how that Sri Hari Mahavishnu himself was going to be born as the 8th child of Devaki and Vasudeva. He assured them that he will come, he will take care of everything, and that actually really gave a big amount of solace to Vasudeva and Devaki. They awoke as if from a trance, and they were very happy with this reassurance. The pregnancy progressed, and it was time for Devaki to deliver her baby. In the month of Shravan, when the Tidhi was Ashtami, and when Rohini star was in ascendance, it was the night time, and there was a torrential downpour of rain. On that day, Devaki went into labor and delivered a beautiful, cute, handsome baby boy. But true to a mother's nature, she was still very scared for her baby, how to safeguard it and all. But as we all know, it is a divine birth. So that Sri Hari Purushottama Mahavishnu appeared in the jail cell in front of them and reassured them that everything will be okay. He also gave a set of instructions to Vasudeva on what to do after the child was born. So, the child then, in order to prove Mahavishnu's words to Devaki and Vasudeva, the child manifested itself in Mahavishnu form, showing all the 4 faculties of Mahavishnu, which is the Shankha, Chakra, Gada and Padmam. The Shankha that is called the Panchajanyam, the Chakram that is called the Sudarshanam, the Gada that is the mace that is called the Kaumodhagi, and Padmam. So he manifested himself with 4 arms. The little baby manifested himself with 4 arms and with full faculties of Mahavishnu, with the sole intention of reassuring Vasudeva and Devaki. Muthuswami Dikshita takes up this divine presentation in his Todi Kriti beautifully. So let's play them. Shankha Chakra Gada Padma Vadham Shankha Chakra Gada Padma Vadham Mahavishnu presented himself with Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padmam, and not only that, Vanamala, and then Kankanam, Keyuram, Makutam, and Chelam, beautiful Pitambara Chelam. So when they saw this, they were definitely very well assured, so much that they couldn't do anything except say Om Namo Narayana by folding their hands, and heart was melting. Ambujam Krishnam, in her Karnaranjani composition, takes this up. Kandadoru kalipodu panpadi kondadi karam kuvitha meyurugi andishayume virulike Om Namo Narayana. Karam kuvitha meyurugi andishayume virulike. Let us all sing Om Namo Narayana, because it is the auspicious day of Vaikunta Ekadasi. So the child was born. Vasudeva and Devaki were kind of very well reassured now, and therefore they were out of their panic mode and all those things. The child now transformed itself to a normal, handsome, cute baby boy. And the beauty of the child is something which is actually not missed by any of the Krishna Bhakta composers. All of them have composed so many songs on just the beauty of the child, just the handsomeness of that child. The first thing that comes to my mind is the Krishna Bhakta, ultra supreme Krishna Bhakta, Narayana Tirtha, who in his Natha Nama Kriya composition says, Pahi Pahi Jaganmohana Krishna, Paramananda Sri Krishna, Devaki Vasudeva Nandana Krishna, Divya Sundara Sri Krishna. He was so divinely handsome. And again, I would like to sing a small part of the Karna Ranjani composition for you, where Ambuja Krishna describes in even more detail the beauty of that child. Pannisaikum Pavalava the ears which were adorned with beautiful kundalams, a beautiful throat in the shape of Venshankham, like a beautiful white conch shell, kinkini, everything, so much so that it was very easy to believe that he was that Vaikunta Tappan who had come down, which was actually the case. So it was very easy to believe seeing this child because he was so handsome. But coming to reality, Vasudeva and Devaki did not have time to marvel in the beauty of the child. As we are all familiar with the term warp speed, so now Vasudeva had to work warp speed because he had been instructed on what to do when the child was born. Remember, he was in the jail cell, he was chained, everything. But with the birth of this beautiful, handsome child, miracles started to happen. The chains that bound Vasudeva just fell off. The jail doors opened. The guards who were guarding that particular jail cell went to sleep or were almost in a trance without knowing what was transpiring inside. So, Vasudeva picked up a wicker basket. He put the newborn baby into that wicker basket and started walking out. The intention was to reach the opposite banks of the Yamuna, where his good friend Nandagopa and Yashoda resided in Nandagramam or in Gokulam. So he started walking out, and just like I had mentioned before, there was torrential rains. It was raining cats and dogs, but according to the instructions that he had received, he started walking out. But again, another miracle happened. The divine serpent Adishesha appeared over there, spread its multiple hoods over the wicker basket and Vasudeva, thereby shading them from the rain. Not a drop of the rain or any other thing would touch the baby or Vasudeva. So he walked towards the Yamuna, where yet another miracle happened. The Yamuna, which was raging and which was in floods earlier, now almost receded towards both the sides, as if creating a path for Vasudeva to walk through. So Vasudeva walked across the Yamuna, and on the other side of the Yamuna, he reached the house of Nandagopa and Yashoda, where coincidentally or by divine intervention, Yashoda had also given birth to a newborn child. Yashoda was in deep slumber after her labor, and without anybody seeing, Vasudeva was able to transfer both the children. The newborn newborn that Devaki had given birth to, that Vasudeva had carried across the Yamuna, he left it by Yashoda's bosom, and the newborn child that Yashoda had given birth to, he transferred to the wicker basket and ferried it right across the Yamuna back to his jail cell in Mathura. Just as he came back to the jail cell, the chains that had initially clasped onto him again, the jail doors closed, all the guards woke up and they were ecstatic, running towards Kamsa to inform him of the birth of that 8th child, which had actually been prophesied to kill Kamsa or to bring about his end. Hearing the news, Kamsa came running again with the sole intention of killing or murdering that 8th born child before it could grow up or cause any harm to Kamsa. So he snatched the child from Devaki's arms. But again, I have to use the term lo and behold, the child slipped from Kamsa's arms, rose up into the air, attained the full celestial divine shape of goddess Yogamaya, and in a very, very satirical tone, she told him, "Oh Kamsa, you fool, the one that is destined to kill you has already been born and is growing up very well elsewhere." Kamsa's ego was hurt further, and he started devising more methods to find out where that child was and to somehow kill that child before it could cause any harm to Kamsa. At this point of time, I want to take all the listeners to the other side of Yamuna where Vasudeva had left his newborn child. So recalling the scene over here, Vasudeva and Devaki are still in jail. Kamsa is tormented with thoughts about how to kill the newborn child that Devaki had given birth to. So, transporting all of you to the other side, other banks of Yamuna, Nandagramam or Gokulam was celebrating the birth of their chieftain's son. All of them assumed that that newborn had been given birth to by Yashoda, and that child was the child of Nandagopal and Yashoda. The entire Gokulam was celebrating, and the child started growing up under the able care and guidance of Nandagopal and Yashoda. They lavished their attention and love and affection on the child. How Yashoda and Nandagopal lavished attention on the child is also a favorite topic of many composers, especially of the Vithala Bhakta Purandaradasa. In one of his Kapi Krithis, he says how Yashoda would always give him milk and buttermilk and butter and yogurt. There was always plenty available for Krishna. Halu bennegala kayyalli koduve, melada bhakshakala bhachittu taruve, O Krishna. And by the way, I forgot to mention, I have to mention here, Nanda Gopal and Yashoda named that child Krishna because the child was extremely handsome and cute, yes, but he was the color of the Kar Megham, dark Neela Megham, and that enhanced his beauty actually, and they named him Krishna because Krishna means the dark colored one. Krishna grew up in their care, and like I said, Yashoda and Nandagopal lavished their attention and care and love and affection on that boy, and they used to revel in his pranks actually. At this point again, with help from both my wonderful accompanists here, I want to present another Purandaradasa composition, this time in Ragam Arabi, where he says how Yashoda used to give butter and milk and all that to this little boy, and how Krishna used to play on the shoulders of Nandagopal, etc. Balakani ke nihalu mosarani ve, balakani ke nihalu mosarani in spite of that, true to the nature of small children, he grew up to be a very, very, very naughty toddler. So much that it wouldn't be too much if we call him as a prankster, probably. So, as I kept repeating, Yashoda would give him large quantities of butter and milk and everything that he really loved so much. Yet, it was his favorite pastime to go to the other houses in the village and steal their butter and buttermilk as well. He would team up with all his friends, the Gopala Balas, go there, break open the earthen pots and steal butter and all that from here. But another Krishna Bhakta Kavi, Uttukada Venkata Subramanya, he takes this up and he says, in the buttermilk or butter that would be flowing down the arms, or the buttermilk and the butter that would be flowing down the legs, were also having some purpose or the another. Let's look at the Vilahari Kriti now by Uttukada Venkata Kavi. Kalinil vazhinda thayir kamala malar kolamida kaiyil vazhivagum vennai gana kuzhaludida. Kalinil vazhinda thayir kamala malar kolamida kaiyil vazhivagum vennai gana kuzhaludida. Neelavanna kannanival nettu விட்டதமுதாகி நெஞ்சமெல்லாம் பொங்கியவன் நினைவாலே ஆடலிட. நெஞ்சமெல்லாம் பொங்கியவன் நினைவாலே ஆடலிட. So in spite of their butter and buttermilk and milk and everything getting stolen, all of them would really get entranced by whatever he was doing. They were enticed by what he was doing, enthralled by what he was doing. And every time they were in his thoughts, he was there on their mind all the time. Nenjamellam pongi avan ninaivaale aadalida. All their minds would dance thinking about him each time, in spite of doing such naughty activities. One other episode which cannot be missed while talking about Krishna Charitham is one which we all know, but it is so beautiful to recount that again, is that of when he ate mud. Right? Yashoda was in such a wonderful position of being his mother that even that Paramatman, even that Sri Hari Purushottam Madhava, she could scold him, chastise him, discipline him, do whatever she wanted. That was such an exalted position given to her. We are coming to that in a very short while, but before that I want to talk about this Manna episode. One fine day, Yashoda was so frustrated with his thieving activities that she said, okay, today I'm not going to give you butter. So in a very defiant mode, Krishna went outside the house and he said, okay, don't give me butter, so today I will eat mud. He went outside the house, picked up a handful of mud or sand or mix, put it into his mouth. Yashoda, who was a prime witness to this, got even more frustrated and she came with a big cane, almost as if to beat that child. And very innocently the child said, Amma, I did not steal butter, I did not eat mud. And she said, oh really? Come on, show me your mouth. I can see, I will be able to see traces of mud over there, and then you try explaining you did not eat mud. And she said, okay. Then Krishna said, okay Amma, I'm going to show you. And then Krishna opened his mouth and what did he see? I'm sure each one of you in the audience can answer that question. He saw the entire universe. He saw the Brahmandam inside Krishna's mouth. And look at how beautifully Annamacharya takes this up in one of his Behag Kritis. Mannu tinna valuchunene pillalandarunu cheppa. Mannu tinna valuchunene pillalandarunu cheppa. Mannu tinna ledanu blood. But what did she see there? She saw the entire Brahmandam. So that was an incident which is going to be there in everybody's mind for as long as the sun and moon exist, I guess. And there are so many compositions. I just chose this one because I like it so much, and I'm sure both of them like it very much too. So this brings me to how I was talking about Yashoda and how lucky she was. Okay. All the other people, even the Sanakadi Munigal, wait in queue to get a darshan of Narayana. That Narayana she had on her fingertips. She could tell him anything, she could argue with him, she could discipline him, she could chastise him, she could love him, she could shower her attention on him, hug him. So this one definitely is addressed by so many kavis, but all of us know of the immortal composition of, evergreen composition of Papanasham Shivan. Enna tavam sheidane Yashoda. The Paraman, who really is not easily available for all the others. It is available only for those who attain absolute those who utterly surrender unto him in Sharanagati, or those who really love him so much. But that Paramatman was available for Yashoda every second of the day. And in that very song, Papanasham Shivan beautifully brings up the incident of where Krishna was tied to the mortar. Because, like I said, he would always go to other houses and steal butter and buttermilk and everything. That Gopikas one day came running to Yashoda complaining about Krishna's antics. So she thought that he is but a small child and tying him down to a mortar will keep him in one place for quite some time. And that he will not be able to go out dragging the mortar, and therefore at least for that day the stealing will not happen. But again, we all know what happened. He dragged the mortar, went outside, dragged it between two trees. But needless to say, again, it is a divine Leela. Pulling out the mortar, dragging it between two trees was also an avatara uddesham, because we all know that those two trees were Gandharvas who were cursed to be trees, and because Krishna dragged the mortar through them, they were liberated from their curse. So he grew up in the ample, lavish care of Nanda Gopal and Yashoda. As he kept growing up, Kamsa, on the other hand, was very much apprehensive and anxious because he had not yet been able to kill that child. By now, he had understood that the child was growing in Nandagramam or Gokulam, and that he had to kill the child somehow. So he sent so many of his emissaries, demons, demonesses, in several forms to try to kill Krishna. But we all know what happened. Krishna was not one to be killed because he was a divine birth. He was a avatara purusha. And in the process of growing up into a toddler or slightly beyond that age, he had annihilated the likes of Putana, Shakatasura, Bakasura, Trinavarta, Vatsasura, and Aghasura. The listeners would also recall that the 7th pregnancy of Devaki had been transferred over to the womb of Vasudeva's another wife, Rohini. Rohini carried the pregnancy full term and gave birth to another very beautiful, handsome boy who was very strong also, and accordingly he was called Balarama. He was the 7th child, Krishna was the 8th child, and therefore Balarama was the elder brother of Sri Krishna. And these two were very, very, very close to each other and almost always tied to the hips. So with Balarama's help, Dhenukasura was also removed from the scene by these two boys. These things are happening in Gokulam, you must remember. Krishna grew up, and through professionalism of the villagers, he was also into that. The professionalism included cattle grazing and what we can now call as the dairy industry. So Krishna used to go out to graze cattle, and the cattle would rest in the midday when Krishna used to take his flute and play always. On one such occasion, cattle went to the river Yamuna to drink some water, and unfortunately all of them fell dead. And then the boys realized that the water, the Gopabalas, realized that the water was poisoned, and they started running towards their village to inform Nanda Gopar about this situation and to see how they could mitigate the situation. But while the boys were running in one direction, Krishna was running in the other direction towards the Yamuna. So he jumped into the Yamuna, and some boys saw this and they were all the more panic stricken, and they ran even faster to Nanda Gopar to tell him that the little child called Krishna had jumped into the poisoned water. So all of them rushed to the banks of the Yamuna. Devaki was almost swooning away in anxiety. All the others, Gopikas, were fainting. But a few seconds later, they saw a multi-hooded serpent rising out of the water, and little Krishna was dancing on its head. Krishna had subdued the serpent, and that serpent's name was Kaliya. And so this episode in Krishna Charitham is very, very famous as the Kaliya-mardhanam. He had made Kaliya promise that he will leave the Yamuna and leave it free for the villagers and villagers of Gokula. And again, this is a very, very, very famous incident that has been used by several composers. But I would like to bring to you a very rare composition of a Malayalam poet, Tulasivanam. Kaliyadamana kalmashamana kanana tulasi bhushanamo kaliyadamana kalmashamana kanana tulasi bhushanamo kaliyadamana. This is a Mohana Kalyani, of course. Kaliyadamana. One small reason for choosing this song is because in this, the Kavi actually brings in an analogy also. Krishna getting rid of the poison of the Yamuna river is also like removing all the chaos and doubts and all that may exist in our minds. Kalmasham, everything is being removed if one surrenders to Sri Krishna. If you go and request for Sharanagati, if you are Sharanagati at his feet, all the kalmashams and every confusion in the mind is taken out, just like the poison was taken out from the waters of Yamuna. Krishna grew up a little more. By now he was almost what we call nowadays as a teenager. And so many miracles having been performed, he was almost like a hero over there, and he was hero worshipped in Gokula. The Gokula Nivasis had this habit of praying to Indira once in every year. And that is because they believed that Indira was the one who would send them rains and all the necessary stuff for a wonderful life, for plenty of bountiful rains, bountiful crops, everything. So they used to pray to Indira. One fine day, Krishna came up with this suggestion saying, why should we pray to Indira? Why don't we pray to that Govardhan mountain? Govardhan mountain is next to our village. That is the one that stops all the rain-laden clouds, and that is the one that gives us the rain. Why don't we pray unto him? And the hero worshipping villages immediately decided to pray unto Govardhan mountain. Needless to say, Indra was very, very angry at this, and he sent down torrential rains, thunder, lightning, thunderstorms, and all those kind of things with the intention of troubling the Gokulavasis because they did not pray unto him. They all the villagers ran to Krishna and they said, Krishna, we told you that we were worshipping Indra. You told us to worship Govardhan. See what has happened now. So Krishna said, come with me. Don't worry. Please don't worry. He went to the Govardhan mountain, actually uprooted it and just carried it up on his little finger like that. All the villages were under the Govardhan mountain, very safe from the rain and the floods and anything else that Indra could do. Krishna had saved them from the wrath of Indra, and with this incident called the Govardhanodharanam, Krishna also got the name of Govardhanagirisha. Muthuswami Dikshithar takes up this very composition, this very name in his Hindolam composition, Govardhanagirisham Smarami, Govardhanagirisham Smarami Anisham, Govardhanagirisham. Then Narayana Tirtha also takes this up in another beautiful Darbari Kannada composition. Govardhana Giridhara Govinda Gokulavaasam Paramananda Govardhana Giridhara Govinda Gokulavaasam Paramananda So like I was telling earlier during the Kaliya-mardhanam episode, Krishna was very, very, very fond of playing the flute, and the flute was inseparable from him. The flute, the Venu or the Murali, the music that used to emanate from Krishna's Murali was so much that it could do anything to anybody, including putting them to sleep or putting them in a trance or anything like that. Thus, Krishna also got the name Muralidhara, Venu Gopala. All those names were attributed to him because of his love for that instrument called Venu or Murali. Again, very famous composition in Mandaragam. Muralidhara Gopala, Muralidhara Gopala, Mukunda Shri Vaikunta, Muralidhara Gopala. And this is another, Murali is associated with music also. So there are so many compositions talking about Krishna's love for Murali and the way he will play Murali, and when he plays Murali, what all that would do, etc. Due to paucity of time, I will just mention a few of them and then move on. Very famous ones that come to my mind, I am sure it comes to your mind also. Asaindadum Mail Ondru Kandal, Oothukadu Venkatakavi composition in Simhendra Madhyamam. Same Oothukadu Venkatakavi composition, Kudaludi Manamellam Kollai Kondapin Kurayedi Enakedadi Sakhi. So he used to play his flute like that, and all the Gopabalas would accompany him, and he was a very, very, very favorite of all the Gopikas also. They were in love with him. They used to have dance performances with him, and they will be there wherever he was. He was a Manohar of the Gopikas. And Dikshidhar takes up this composition. This very term is used in the composition Gopika Manoharam in Mohanam. Shall we have a look at it? Gopika Manoharam Bhaje, Gopika Manoharam Bhaje, Gopika Manoharam Bhaje, Govardhanodharanam, Suravaram Puraharam, Gopika Manoharam Bhaje. So he was a favorite of all the Gopikas. He was a Manohar of all the Gopikas. Having said that, there was one particular Gopastri, Gopika, who was very, very favorite. She was a favorite of Krishna, and her name was Radha. Needless to say, there are many compositions on Radha Devi also, and the immortal love between Krishna and Radha. Just a brief glimpse, 2 lines glimpse of a composition on Radha Devi in Kapi. Raseshwari Devi Krishna Manohare, Agladini Devi Premamaye, Raseshwari Devi Krishna Manohare, Agladini Devi Premamaye. So thus Krishna was in his teenage years now, performing all Rasaleelas, playing all the Rasakreedas, everything. Now for a moment, let me take you back to Mathura, where Kamsa has not yet been able to do anything to this baby boy, and he is from the position of a tormented ego and a hurt ego, he is going to that panic stage now. He has to do something to kill Krishna. So he comes up with this new plan. He tries to organize a big festival wherein there are wrestling matches, there are wrestling matches with elephants, etc., etc. So he sends an emissary to Gokulam, and the name of that emissary is Akrura. So he sends Akrura to Gokula, and the order that Akrura had received is somehow bring Krishna and Balarama back to Mathura, and let me see what I can do to kill them at Mathura. All my attempts at killing them in Nandagram have failed. I've sent Putana, I sent so many others, Shakatasura, Bakasura, everyone. All those attempts have failed, and therefore let me try to kill them at Mathura. So Akrura, the emissary of Kamsa, but we all know that he was a Krishna Bhakta also. That comes later. But right now he is an emissary of Kamsa. He comes to Nanda Gopal's house and he conveys the message of the king. Nanda Gopal and Yashoda, they did not want to send Kamsa and Balarama, who in their opinion were yet children. So to send Krishna and Balarama alone to Mathura, they were not for it, and they even offered that all of them would come together, but Akrura would not have it because his instructions were not like that, orders were not like that. Finally, Krishna intervened because he realized that the time had come for his Avatara Uddesham. One of his Avatara Uddesham was to kill Kamsa and rid this world of Kamsa's tyranny and despotic methods, demonic methods. He knew that the time had come, and somehow he convinced Nanda Gopal to let him and Balarama go to Kamsa's place. Krishna and Balarama traveled with Akrura, reached Mathura, and one of the early miracles he performed just as he was entering the city of Mathura was to straighten the hunchback of a hunchback lady. As he went to the palace, Kamsa had arranged wrestling matches, And everybody who was a witness to that wrestling match knew that it was the most unfair of matches, because Krishna and Balarama were yet children, but the opponents arranged for them were very accomplished wrestlers, very hefty build, tall, and everybody expected that they would defeat or kill Krishna and Balarama, and they were very anxious for Krishna and Balarama. But in the wrestling pit, or on the wrestling pit, we all know what happened. The wrestlers by name Chanoora and Mushtika were defeated and killed by Krishna and Balarama. Swami Sadashiva Brahmendra takes this up in his Hindolam Kriti, where he mentions Chanoora was killed. Natamandaram Nandakishoram Natamandaram Nandakishoram Hata Chanoram Hamsaviharam Hata Chanoram Hamsaviharam Hata Chanoram. So Krishna performed the Hatam of Chanoora. Mushtika was also killed. Kamsa was a little worried, yes, but he believed in his rogue elephant. He sent a rogue elephant towards Krishna. The rogue elephant was also killed. And again, due to paucity of time, to cut the long story short, Krishna reached the palace hall, and Kamsa was dragged down from his throne. Krishna sat on his chest, and Kamsa was killed. Kamsa-vadham was performed. So, if you all recall, Kamsa was Krishna's mother Devaki's brother. So the lesson for all of us over here is that duty, what you have to do, duty comes first. And being the God, if it is one's own uncle or mama, even then if he is doing wrong, he has to be annihilated for the greater good. Again, Muthuswami Dikshita beautifully describes this in the Hindolam Kriti. Garvita Kamsa-vadham Govardhana Girisham Smarami Anisham Gopikadi Manoharam Garvita Kamsa-vadham. Garvita Kamsa-vadham. Why Kamsa had to be killed? Because he was Garvita. The worm called ego had eaten much of his brain already. So he had to be annihilated. With Kamsa-vadham having been performed, Ugrasena Maharaja was restored to the throne, and Mathura was kind of safe now. And so we go on to the next phase of Krishna, where he had to undergo education, for which Sandipani Muni's ashram was selected. Sandipani Muni was entrusted with the education of Sri Krishna. Krishna went to learn at Sandipani Muni's ashram, and we all know that it is there that he met Sudama or Kuchela, and they became very thick friends, a friendship which continued on to later ages, even when Krishna became the king. So he was a favorite. Krishna was a favorite of all the munis, as described in many songs, especially Dikshita's another Mohanam composition, where he says, Muni Manasa Hamsare Muni Nuta Bahu Santosha. He used to give Santosha for every munis. And then he was also a friend of anybody who would sincerely love him, especially very poor people. He was Deena Bandhu. Krishna was Deena Bandhu indeed. And this is taken up by Swati Tirunal in his Maya Malava Gaula composition. Deena Bandhu Mama Vaditi Jali Vihana. Deena Bandhu Mama now Krishna has grown up after his education at Santipani Muni's ashram. He had reached marriageable age. And he was so handsome and all that. Okay, many of the women had their eyes on them. But in the kingdom of Vidarbha, Rukmini Devi had also been growing up along with her brother Rukmi, who had arranged her marriage with the king of Chedi, who was called Shishupala. Rukmini Devi did not like this at all, and as ultimate act of defiance, she sent a dood to Bhagawan Sri Krishna, and the message conveyed was that if you don't come and get me, I'm not going to be alive to marry this Shishupala. So Krishna understood that Rukmini Devi had surrendered herself to him and it was his duty to protect her. So he went in a chariot. Balarama, the loving brother, followed with hordes of army and all that, assuming that it may be necessary because Rukmini would fight with Sri Krishna. So Rukmini, on the eve of her marriage, went to pray to her family goddess who was Parashakti. As she was coming out of the temple, Krishna appeared in a chariot, whisked her away towards Dwaraka, and Rukmini, the brother, did give a chase, but of course Balarama and his army defeated Rukmi, and Krishna brought Rukmini, and the marriage between Krishna and Sri Rukmini was solemnized. On the marriage day, Krishna was the most handsome bridegroom one could ever see. Purandaradasa takes this up and describes the beauty of the bridegroom in what all he was wearing to how he looked and everything like that. This kriti is in Purvi Kalyani. Mastakadalli manikada kirita kasturi tilakade kole balalada shishtili kolelanu kuduva porenota kausubayadavala olyada Krishna modi kanna Kiridam on his mastakam, Kasturi Tilakam on his forehead, Udhyanam around his waist, wearing all other abharanams, but most importantly, he was wearing his Pidambaram, which was like, Krishna appeared like Shata Ravi Kirana, 100 rays of the sun coming together. Krishna, that one person, appeared like that, as if there were 100 rays of sun falling on our eyes together. So if Krishna was like this, was Rukmini far behind? No, she was actually goddess Sri Lakshmi avataram. So she was also extremely, extremely beautiful. And this was also taken up by none other than Swami Tyagaraja in his Ganamurti Kriti. Manini, Mani. one who stole away Krishna's heart, because she was divine goddess Sri Lakshmi incarnate as Sri Rukmini. So in this way, very handsome bridegroom got married to the most beautiful bride, and this is another very, very, very famous incident in Krishna Charitham called the Rukmini Swayamvaram. And Krishna carried her away and married her, yes, but why is it still called as Swayamvaram? That is because Swayamvaram just refers to a marriage where the girl chooses the bridegroom, where she has the freedom to choose her bridegroom. In this case, Sri Rukmini definitely chose her bridegroom, sent an emissary to him to come and get her, and she got married to the man of her dreams, and therefore it is Rukmini Swayamvaram. Again, due to paucity of time, hoping that we all will be given another opportunity where I can explain things more, I just want to mention that there was this episode of the Syamantaka gem where Satyajit had by mistake suspected Krishna of stealing it, but on understanding that Krishna was not the culprit, he offered not only the Syamantaka gem to Krishna, but also his daughter Satyabhama in marriage to Sri Krishna. Jambavat, the bear king, also offered his daughter Jambavati. So Krishna was married to Sri Rukmini, Satyabhama and Jambavati. Of this, Sri Rukmini and Satyabhama are most important, and this one again beautifully mentioned in Kama's Kriti by Dikshita. Shri Rukmini Satyabhama Sametam. Shri Rukmini Satyabhama Sametam. Krishna grew up. He is married now, living happily with his wives. And at this point of time, in the kingdom of Hastinapur, there was brewing an enmity between cousins Kauravas and Pandavas. Needless to say, Krishna was on the side of Pandavas. And why was it so? It is not just because he was related to them through their mother Kunti Devi, but also because he was the divine incarnation. So, he was always on the side of the righteous. And in that particular context of Hastinapur, Kauravas and Pandavas, the Pandavas happened to be the righteous side, and therefore he was on their side always. Papanasham Shivan immortalizes this in his Shanmugapriya compositions. Pandavar Neyanai, Bhakta Sahayanai, Pavarasam Vayanai, Paramanai, Mayanai, Panimaname. So, reminiscing that composition, let us also always pray unto that Paraman, who was a big, big close friend of Pandava. Because he was a close friend of Pandava, he would do everything good and righteous for them. Even in this friendship with Pandavas, there was a special relation between him and Arjuna. So much that that pair was called Nara and Narayana. So, Krishna knew about this impending war, and he knew that it was a war of dharma. So anybody taking part in that could even hope to win only if dharma was on their side, and if they themselves were rid of the worldly vices like ego, jealousy, etc., etc. Krishna, being the very close friend of Arjuna, knew that Arjuna had a wee bit of ego or pride, as you would call it, assuming that he was the greatest archer, Dhanurdhar. So it was Krishna's duty as the closest friend to get rid of that ego also before the war. And thus, the incident of Santhana Gopalam was staged by Krishna, wherein Arjuna had promised to safeguard the 7 children of a Brahmin, and when he couldn't do that, so Arjuna was preparing to self-immolate himself in a fire, and it was then that Krishna intervened and said, the children are safe, don't worry, don't burn yourself. But this was to get rid of that last bit of ego in you. Okay, so even if you are the greatest Dhanurdhar, you need the support and blessings of that divine Almighty always. So Santhana Gopalam also actually performed by Sri Krishna, again immortalized by Dikshithar in his Kamas composition. Santhana Gopalam So just like Krishna had anticipated, the inevitable war broke out. Again, cutting the long story short for paucity of time, Pandavas won the war, but how did they win the war? It was only and only because Krishna was on their side. And that episode also, how Krishna happened to be on their side, is also a big story. How Duryodhana got the Yadava army, but Arjuna got Krishna himself. And Arjuna was the happiest person, saying, one Krishna is enough for me, equivalent to any army in this world. And we all know how Krishna was Arjuna's mentor, advisor, teacher, guru. We all know how Bhagavad Gita was instructed to Arjuna. So, Krishna did not take up a weapon, not even once, but he won the war for the Pandavas because he was present along with Arjuna as his Sarathi. And by now, Arjuna was very happy with Krishna being just the mentor or the guru. And Arjuna was actually called Partha also because he was born of Pritha. Pritha was another name for Kunti Devi. Because he was the son of Pritha, he was also called the Partha. And now Krishna had become the Sarathi for Partha. So Krishna was also called as Parthasarathy, and it was absolutely due to Parthasarathy and Parthasarathy alone that Pandavas were able to win the war by defeating great accomplished warriors like Grandsir Bhishmacharya, Guru Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Dronacharya's son Ashwatthama, Shalya, and so many other warriors. This is again epitomized and immortalized by Dikshithar in his Shuddha Dhanya Sikriti. Shri Parthasarathy na paritosmya hamsada. Shri Parthasarathy na paritosmya hamsada. Shri Parthasarathy na paritosmya hamsada. Shri So the war was won by the Pandavas, and after that Krishna returned to Dwaraka and he was ruling as the king with Rukmini Devi and Satyabhama by his side. We all know Kuchela approaches him again and how he rewarded Kuchela so much that at one point of time Rukmini Devi had to interfere in the amount of blessings being given to Kuchela. So with that very happy note, I would like to bring today's episode to a conclusion by saying Pandavas were ruling wonderfully well at Hastinapuram. Krishna was in Dwaraka, but by now another part of the Bhumi Devi's burden called the Kauravas, who were not the righteous side, had also been annihilated from this earth, including Duryodhana, Dushasana and all of them, with the help of Krishna. So now Krishna realized that his Avadara Uddesha was over on this earth. And after that, he went into a samadhi under a tree, where we know that a hunter's arrow was a supposed reason, and with the help of that, Swargaarohanam happened. And we would like to conclude our today's program with that. And the conclusion, I would like to sing a very, very popular bhajan, and I'm hoping that every viewer will join us. Deva Deva Shri Krishna Hare Jaya, Devaki Sutta Gopala Bala, Radhika Chitta Chora Namo Namo Yadunada, Adi Purusha Iyer and Sriram Ayyeppen. We would all like to thank the Prashala team for giving us this opportunity. We also sincerely thank all the members of the audience for motivating, encouraging and supporting us. In the course of this program or my narration, if I have made any factual errors or any other error, I seek ultimate pardon from God and from my Guru. Kayena vacha manasendriyeva buddhyatmanabha prakrite swabhava karomi yadyat sagalam parasmai Sriman Narayanayeti samarpayami. And conclusion I would like to do with Poontanam's